My name is Donald Campbell, and I'm a father of 4, and I'm grieving for 2. 2 months apart, 2 birthday celebrations, 2 accidents, 2 lorries, 2 lives taken away. I'm a father of 4, and I'm grieving for 2. So I guess my story really starts on June the 1st, 2016. June the 1st, I've always been a special day for me. It's always a sunny day, it's always a happy day. It's always one of those days I look forward to. I kind of based my whole year of June the 1st. That day, I was up in Gloucestershire. I knew I wasn't going to see Jared that day, but I had sent him a birthday message. He didn't reply, but that wasn't unusual. So later that day, I needed to get to London via Southampton. So I left Gloucester pretty late, around 11 o'clock. I'm on the M3. It's pretty early. I'm in roadworks. The lanes are really narrow. There's a lot of lorries about. It's a bit misty, so it's hard to see. Then I noticed my phone was flashing. It wasn't ringing, it was flashing. But I couldn't really get hold of it because, as I said, the traffic was really bad. But the phone rang for a long time. So, but I didn't answer it. Around 20 minutes later, the phone started ringing again, but again, I was still in traffic, so I still couldn't answer it. But I did grab the phone and have a look at it, and I noticed that my second son's mother, a picture was on my phone. I remember being really perplexed, because she doesn't have this number, but a picture's on my phone. So at this time I answered, but I didn't say nothing, but I listened, but I didn't hear no one say anything. So I just had it in my mind, oh, perhaps it was just, she had the phone in her pocket and she phoned my number by mistake. I remember thinking, well, she hasn't got my number, so how comes? But anyway, she didn't call back. I eventually got to Heathrow at the data centre, put my things down. I remember going to the kitchen to make myself a cup of coffee. But when I came back, my phone was flashing again. So this time I noticed it was a friend of mine, my other son, his godmother was calling me. I was like, hey, strange. So I answered, and all I heard someone crying emphatically, and all she said was, they can't do anything for him. At that point, my battery phone went dead. I remember I was standing up, but the next thing I remember was my colleagues were picking me up, asking me what's wrong. At that point I said, I think one of my children's in trouble, I'm not quite sure. I explained that battery's gone flat on my phone. We then spent the next 10, 15 minutes trying to get sufficient charge into the phone to dial back the number, to find out what happened. It was a long 15 minutes, I would say. It probably seemed more like an hour. I had to just sit there wondering which one of my sons. I have 3 sons, one daughter. Eventually, we was able to call her back. She said that Jared had been in an accident. All the other passengers in the car had died, but Jared was alive, and he's in Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Birmingham. So at that point, I remember trying to grab my keys, and all I remember, my hands were shaking. I actually couldn't pick up my bunch of keys. A colleague of mine said, you can't drive. Another colleague of mine offered to drive me back to up to Birmingham, which, gosh. Anyway, we jumped in his car. He had a really fast car. By the time we got out of Heathrow, the roadworks were really bad, the traffic was really bad, so we decided to head up the M4 towards Gloucester way, and then head off to the hospital that way. So during the journey, we decided to go pick up Liam, my first son. He was actually sleeping at the time. I woke him up, I explained it to him that Jared had been in an accident and we need to get to Birmingham as quick as possible. So we got just quickly and we headed off. It wasn't long on the M5 before we ourselves was in traffic. And we was wondering, oh gosh, what's happened here? But over the other side of the motorway, we approached a car accident. You could vaguely recognize it was a car. It was literally bits and pieces of a car. All I personally recognized was the back axle. We all made various comments, as to, gosh, we feel sorry for whoever was in that car. Didn't even think that it could be Jared's accident because this was some 8+ hours after. So I remember we made some comments. We drove for around 2 minutes, then the car went silent because we wondered, was that Jared's accident? But we just dismissed it. It can't be, it can't be. So anyway, we get to Birmingham Hospital, Queen Elizabeth. I remember the first thing I recognized was I started seeing cars I recognized. Of course, I didn't know the full impact at this time. I started seeing cars I recognized, started seeing 1 or 2 people I recognized as I'm walking to the hospital from the car park. And I go into the hospital, I see more and more people I recognize. Mainly Jared's mother's side of the family and his friends. But no one hadn't really said anything, and I was still under the impression Jared was alive. I remember walking up some steps towards the ward he was on, bracing myself. I didn't really know what to expect, but to me, Jared was going to survive somehow. I walked to his ward, they opened the curtains, and there he was, stripped to the waist, tubes, monitors, bleeping. But there was a calm panic around him. I didn't see any nurses and doctors fluttering around him. It was just calm. But he had a lot of tubes and monitors, and it was a sorry sight. But he looked as he was untouched. The only evidence I could see that he had almost a paw scratch on this cheek and a paw scratch on that cheek. Apart from that, he looked fine. He looked like he was going to wake up anytime now. The damage wasn't evident. He really looked like he was going to wake up, and I was hoping, praying, just wake up, Ja, just wake up, come on. We call him Ja. So shortly after, a doctor came in, and he explained that Jared actually died at the scene of the accident, but he was brought back to life. But unfortunately, there was nothing they could do for him at this point. And this would sound really strange, he would die again. And it was just a matter of time. They more or less gave him, he would die within the next couple hours. Of course, I'm looking at Jared thinking, no, he looks all right. He looks all right. But they explained again that he will not survive, he will die. Of course, everyone was shattered. Hearts were broken, because I think that was more or less the first time it was like officially stated that, he will die. amongst all the hope and of everyone. That lasted more or less 2 days. We all had to watch him. His friends, his family had to watch him go. Me and his mother spent. The doctor came in and said, after a day or so, and told us that he's actually declining now, and it won't be too long. It'll be like a couple hours. So me and his mother spent our last hours with him. We called the priest. Everyone filtered in, said the final goodbyes, and ultimately, because of the damage, because of the impact damage to the brain, he eventually died. Hearts were broken, family, friends, no disbelief. I mean, till this very day, I'm still in shock about it, to be honest. But it's a sight I would never forget, seeing my boy in such a condition. That vision of him on that bed haunts me till this very day. Because I thought he was going to wake up. I thought he was going to come back. I thought he had strength and courage and he was just going to just make it through somehow. But it wasn't to be. Anyway, Jared was buried some 3 weeks after. He had a great funeral. The whole community came out. Local dignitaries came to his funeral. He had a great send-off, absolutely great send-off. But hearts was ultimately broken. He has brothers and sisters that still can't come to terms with it. Just can't. In fact, he can't even mention Jared's name because it puts them in a total different mindset and it just changes them. So they're still suffering now. After the funeral, it was just a very sorrow time. I personally probably spent 1 month straight in my bedroom. I remember not actually coming out of my house for weeks. And when I did come out, all I really could do is walk around the block and walk straight back into my house, straight back upstairs. I lived in my house with my eldest son, Liam. Him and Jared grew up together and were extremely close. They actually done everything together, from driving go-karts to playing football to playing endless Sega Mega Drive PlayStations. It was, we had great fun. He was sorely missed, sorely missed. So the weeks went on. I remember getting a phone call from Liam one day. He said, "Dad, I'm over in Cheltenham. I'm at the boxing event. I really want you to get out of the house. Come over. Come and watch the boxing." So I actually dug down deep and eventually I got out of the house. It probably was the first time I'd been out of the house for quite some while. I drove over to Cheltenham. Liam had the table at this boxing event. That's where he told me that, he's booked to fight on the same show on the 3rd series or something like that in a few months' time. I remember our conversation clear. I said, don't do it. I'm not quite sure if he can do it. But he was adamant, he wanted to do it. So I gave him my blessing and told him he must train, really hard. After that event, I went back to the square one, back into my house, a big empty house. Liam's in and out. I see people coming to knock on my door, but you know what? When you're in that mode, it's really hard to answer the door to everybody. It's really hard to answer the phone to everybody. You're almost hiding from from people, because you don't want to let out your emotions, your feelings. I know people, are coming to check up on me and they all come in good spirit, but it's really hard to actually deal with, the loss of a loved one, such as Jared. I mean, this boy gave me my greatest joy as a father, greatest joy. And I mean, I love all my children, but he gave me the greatest joy, mainly because he was a top-notch sportsman, and watching him perform was a great joy. But anyway, after Jared's funeral, went to the boxing event. After the boxing event, I'm back in the house again. Still can't do anything. Just can't get out. August approaches. I know it's Liam's birthday shortly, but I'm suffering. I'm actually covered, at this point, I'm actually covered in a skin rash. The doctor says it's brought on from stress. I was actually covered from top to toe. I say that my skin looks more like a crocodile skin. I mean, it was just horrible. August the 8th approaches. It's my eldest son's birthday. He's approaching 31. He had been currently looking for a job since Jared's funeral. That day, August the 8th, so happened to be Liam's birthday, he came into the house jubilant. He came into the house holding 2 bottles, actually, saying that I've just come from an interview. They've told me that I've more or less got the job, and he's very happy. I mean, I remember asking Liam, why are you holding two bottles? Because you're not actually drinking them. He said, oh, Dad, I'm just very happy, just very happy. I said, okay. He asked me, are we going out today, as usual? I told him, today I'm unable to go out, son, because the skin condition I have is stopping me from walking. Actually, between my thighs, I'd become really sore. I was actually struggling to walk anywhere. At that point, he said, okay, but he still wanted to celebrate his birthday. So at that point, he called one friend. I remember his friend saying to him, you sound like you're drunk already, you need to go and sleep it off. Because of course I'm overhearing Liam's conversation. I remember Liam laughing. Anyway, he calls his other friend. His friend says he's coming to take him out for his birthday. Within 10 minutes, he came round. His friend's name's Dean. We were sat in the kitchen, me, Liam, and Dean. I remember Liam asking Dean if he wanted to drink. Dean said no. They chatted a bit, they laughed, they joked. I sat on the stool just looking at him. He was dressed in his suit. He had the red tie on. And he just kept on smiling, At that point, they decided that they wanted to go to a club in Cheltenham. So anyway, I told them, have a great time, and I'll see him later on or tomorrow morning. That was a very sunny day. I spent most of that day in my garden. Anyway, Liam went out. The next morning, I didn't hear him come in, but the next morning, I was back in my garden. I remember I sat on a stool. I had a friend staying at my house at the time. I didn't actually hear my door ring, but I heard my friend's voice saying, "Not again." But he's at the front door, I'm in the garden, the patio doors are open. I was a bit like, what not again? At that point, he came out of the kitchen and said, there's some policemen at your front door. They want to speak to you. I didn't think anything of it. So I went to the door. There were 2 policemen. Now, strange thing is, I actually didn't see the first policeman. I didn't even hear what he said, because what I recognized was the second policeman who was stood behind. And I'm looking at him, because I'm saying to myself, I recognize him. I recognize him. Where from? But I recognize you. And then at that point, I kind of realized it's from Jared's accident. I remember just walking backwards. I still can't hear what the first policeman saying. I remember I was just walking backwards. I remember one of the policemen saying Dean had died, the driver had died. But this time I'm walking through my hallways backwards. I walked through my dining room backwards. I walked through my kitchen backwards. I remember going in the garden. I remember them saying, "Liam needs you right now. He's in Oxford." I remember falling onto the grass. I said, no, 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 it can't be. No, 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 it can't be. I remember a policeman and my friend picking me up. The policeman said, your son needs you right now. We have to go. I remember brushing off the dirt off my, because I only had a vest on at the time. So I was brushing off the dirt off my skin, wondering, this can't be. Anyway, I had to get myself together, dry my eyes, jump in the police car. Then I quickly had to tell the policeman, let's go and get his mother. We went up to his mother's house. She wasn't there, she was at work. So we went to the Royal Hospital to pick her up. I found her eventually. I told her what happened. We jumped in the police car and sped off to Oxford. We nearly had a couple of accidents in the police car. It was going so fast, mainly because where Liam had his accident was on the main road. So the early morning traffic was making the whole of Gloucester a nightmare for drivers. There's traffic everywhere. Anyway, eventually we get to Oxford. I wasn't sure what to expect, actually. But again, I knew that he was alive. So of course, me being me, I've got full hope. Full hope. No one told me anything. They didn't tell me his life was threatened. They just told me he was in a bad way. So eventually we get to Oxford. Again, park the car. I see 1 or 2 people I recognize as I'm walking through the hospital. I remember people kind of, 1 or 2 people I recognized made the way for where Liam was. So I kind of followed the people. Then of course I was directed to the ward. They opened the curtains and there he was, another deja vu, stripped to the waist with exactly the same tubes, pipes, monitors, everything the same as Jared, deja vu. They look exactly the same. Again, he looked a bit unharmed, as if he can wake up at any second, but exactly the same. Again, that vision will stay with me for the rest of my life. I've seen them both in exactly the same criteria, same look, same. So After seeing him like that, a doctor came over, explained his injuries. Couldn't believe it. I mean, they did really well, they looked after him really well, they tried their very best, they did everything possible, but his injuries were very bad. I mean, he had a punctured liver, broken ribs, shoulder, collarbone. He had head injuries. It wasn't evident, but again, he had head injuries that was gonna that he wasn't gonna get over. He's been in hospital for over 3 years now. The doctors have done miracles. I mean, if you see Liam today, he looked absolutely normal. But he's left in a condition where he's unable to talk, he's unable to see, he's unable to eat, and he's unable to move. The movement he has is very small. We're talking toes and fingers. His range of movement in his limbs are, on a good day, it's a matter of inches he may be able to move. But most days he's submerged with sleep. He sleeps, he wakes up. Sometime on a good day, you can get some sort of communication out of him. Other days, nope. It's been 3 years. He's bedridden, totally dependent on people for everything. But he has a great team around him. But it's a constant reminder to me. I mean, thankfully he didn't die, but to see your son in that condition, it's harder to take, very hard to take. Especially when, you know, we're talking weekly, I have to go and see him. I did spend 2.5 years by his side, but of course you realize that that's doing me no good. And of course I have other children that's suffering. So somehow I have to deal with Liam. I have to deal with the relationship I have with my other children, who are totally heartbroken over their 2 brothers. And then of course I have to deal with me. It's been one of those things that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. It's really hard to, mentally, physically, it's not so bad, but mentally, it's the hardest thing to deal with. I have a constant reminder of what happened when I see Liam. I mean, it hurts. But one of the things that really hurts me about my children's accidents, they were both passengers. So their fate was in somebody else's hands. And due to bad driving, due to alcohol, because of these things, left my children. One died and one in a permanent state of bedridden, basically.
In any accident, critical decisions could have significantly altered the outcome. Donald proceeds to provide a detailed account of the circumstances surrounding each incident, highlighting the crucial decisions that ultimately shaped the course of those significant days.
So, I would like to tell you a bit more about what actually happened in my children's accident. All his friends came and took him out to Birmingham for a special meal. There's 2 carloads of them. On the way back, the owner of the car that Jared was in decides to allow his friend to drive his courtesy car back to Gloucester. The driver starts racing with his other friend in another car. They are doing speeds well in excess of 120 miles an hour. The motorway is clear in front of them. The motorway is clear behind them. In the distance, the driver can see a lorry with its hazard lights on in the middle lane of the motorway. But he decides that he's not going to slow down. He's going to carry on racing. Yes, he feels that he can race past the stranded lorry in the outer lane. But what he didn't know is that the lorry was actually protecting an early accident. He's protecting the passengers of a car that had an early accident, and he was protecting the passengers who were stranded in that car. So the driver of Jared's car and the car behind it, they come down the M5 racing. He pulls out into the outer lane to drive around the lorry. At this point he decides or realizes that the third lane is actually blocked and he's unable to get through. But bear in mind the speeds they are doing, he suddenly tries to get to the inner lane, the first lane, because it's clear. But of course, at that speed and the reaction time and the distance between the car and the lorry, he had nowhere to go. So he virtually smashed into the stationary lorry at a very high speed. So that was the car that me and Liam had seen on the M5 when we were going to Birmingham. That was the bits and pieces of a car. That's the car Jared was in. The second car actually manages to clip Jared's car, but all the passengers in that car survived. Incidentally, the only person that actually survived in Jared's car was the owner. He actually died, but was brought back to life. And he has to live with the fact that he allowed his friends to drive his car so erratically. My heart sinks every time I pass that point on the motorway. It actually stinks to a level that I try not to cry, I try not to shout and try not to scream. I just have to contain it. It hurts me. He was a passenger. His life was in the hands of someone else. He never returned from his birthday. That hurts. Never returned. So June the 1st will always be a memorable day to me for many reasons, good, bad. It's hard for it to be a happy day. There's more sorrow, more than happiness, but it will always be a treasured day. 8 weeks after that, of course, it was Liam's birthday. So I'll tell you how his friends came to take him out for his birthday. They went to Cheltenham. Liam was a bit drunk. He came out of the club. He was actually drunk on the sidewalk. His friends then came out of the club, found him outside somewhere, picked him up, put him in the back of their car. They then went back into the club and got totally intoxicated by alcohol. They came out of the club. It was actually two brothers. They attended the car. The car was unable to start. One of the brothers decided he's going to go and look for some jump leads to start the car. All we know that he said when he came back, the car had gone. The car was later found heading towards Oxford on the A40. It had a head-to-head collision with a lorry. The driver was twice over the limit. He was driving erratically. The whole of the time, Liam was on the back seat, unconscious, unaware of what was happening. The driver died instantly. Liam has been fighting for his life ever since.
Donald shares his deep grief and challenges he has faced coping with the loss. He reflects on the personalities of his sons and the impact they had on his life, highlighting the closeness he shared with them. Donald also discusses his struggle with depression and the difficulty of moving forward while trying to maintain a sense of normalcy for his other children.
So, because of other people's actions, me and my family, his close friends, have been left devastated. And that applies to Jared as much as Liam. Devastated. Both boys are deeply missed. They were truly loved by all. We all miss Liam's smile. He had the biggest smile about. He was a really a people's person. He liked to talk to people. He liked to communicate with people. He was very law-abiding. He wouldn't put his life at risk. But someone else put his life at risk. As for Jared, it's not as if there was any drinks or drugs actually. It was strictly just boys being unresponsible in a motor vehicle and not actually acknowledging the consequences of what really can happen if you're not paying attention to what you're doing. It's all very sad. Their brothers and sisters are just devastated. It's really hard for them to even call either names. At the moment, we have a really deep relationship, my other children, but we are still unable to actually talk about Liam or Jared at all. We're very close now, but the children just can't talk about them. They're going through their own things. They were teenagers when this happened, and they were both devastated. I get the impression at moments all they actually want is a normal life. I don't think they really wanted the stigma of the whole time looking at them as, oh, there's Liam and Jared's brothers or sisters, and I think they just want a normal life because they need to grow up. They don't need this to hold them back. But at the same time, I have to have a relationship with them that's strong and do whatever I can for them. But it's really difficult. They both missed. His brother, absolutely devastated. Absolutely devastated. I mean, some people ask me, how do I cope being a father of both of them and these accidents happening within the space of 8 weeks? You know what? I'm not quite sure how I deal with it. I kind of realized early on that, okay, these accidents have happened and I'm bound to go through the depression, just bound to. I'm a normal guy, I'm going to get depressed, which is okay. So I realized that was going to happen, so I allowed it to happen. But I knew I had to come out of it eventually. But the heartache, not just for me, for everyone, it's just, it's hard to take. So in order to get out of it, I mean, I was submerged by thoughts. I had a massive weight on my shoulders. I had this, every hour I would have Jared in my head, Liam in my head. The thoughts take over you as a person. There's not a lot that you can do, but eventually what you learn to do is to control those thoughts. I normally, when my thoughts click to the boys, I automatically try to think of something happy that we done about them. I try not to think about anything sad or something that's going to make me sad. I try to think of something that's going to put a smile on my face when I think about them. In the early days, immediately after, what I used to have was this massive tension, this anxiety, I'm not quite sure what to call it, this building up. Of course, I'm having to act normally during my normal day routine, but the whole time you have this thing building up in you where you just want to scream and shout. Not a case of actually crying, you just need to scream and shout. So quite often what I would do is go up into the hills of Painswick and literally just have a scream, have a shout, and feel a lot better after. Just to get that tension out of me. I took a couple of years off work to try to get over this. To stay by Liam's bedside. I wanted to be there. But eventually you realize you have to, the mortgage still have to be paid. You realize that life goes on, that my other children need me to be a father. So you have to come out of this cocoon you're in, and you have to take yourself out of that cocoon. Very difficult it may be, but it has to happen. I had one counselling session, but I kind of felt like I knew what he was trying to do and how he was trying to, get me to be interactive with him. But I understood what he was doing, but it wasn't enough. I knew it was something that I had to do myself. I know he can give me the techniques, but it's something that I had to try to get myself some clear space so I can think, I can put my life in order and move forward. Because of course Liam's stuck in hospital. I have to visit him once, twice a week. And of course you can't think of one without thinking of the other. So it's really hard. It's really hard. This is something that affects me on a daily. It's part of my day. I just learn how to box it up. Every so often I have to look in a box. I have to go and see Liam. I have to deal with seeing my eldest son in our state. then I have to leave him there, which is the hardest thing to do. And then I have to go and live a life. I have to look after my other children. Then I have to come back. So what I find myself doing is going into a situation that's a very stressful situation, visually and emotionally. Then I have to take myself away from that situation and go and live a life, go and work, and try not to meditate on the boys. It's really hard to do, but it's something you have to do. Many people have been in my situation, but most people lose one child, but to lose two is a double blow. But somehow you have to find the strength, because there's always another day, and you've got to wake up, you've got to live that day. So life actually does go on, but emotionally, I am probably a broken man. Of course I am. As I said, those two children represent 32 years of my entire life. We were so close. Liam is like my other half. He's the one constant. I had him when I was 21. We're very, very, very close. We still holidayed together. We still live together. We go to the gym together. So it's very hard to live without him. Jared was a young man, found his feet. He was an engineer like his father. Jared he had an unusual personality. He can be a bit gimmicky, but you know what, once you knew him, you would laugh with him. He had a big smile. Quiet boy. He would just go and do his own thing. He knew what he wanted and he would do it. He didn't need praise of anyone else. He would just go and do his own thing. And I think that's what a lot of people liked about him. But again, you know, his fate was in the hands of someone else. I mean, I don't want to hate anybody. I don't want to lay blame, but it is what it is. My children were passengers.
Liam passed away peacefully on 2nd of September 2022, surrounded by his friends and family. He rests next to his brother Jared in Gloucester Cemetery.